Taking Britain into Europe will be Ted Heath's legacy, but there was an epic rivalry at the top of the Conservative Party too. A political giant, Lady Thatcher's tribute to the man she toppled. Also tonight, bombing inquiry detectives investigate a radical bookshop in Leeds. And Tiger's triumph, he wins his second Open Championship. Hello, good evening. He was the son of a carpenter who from humble beginnings became Prime Minister and led Britain into Europe. Tonight, Sir Edward Heath has died peacefully at his home in Salisbury. The former leader of the Conservatives celebrated his 89th birthday just last week. Tonight, Tony Blair led the tribute, saying that he was a man of great integrity. Lady Thatcher, with whom he shared a memorable feud, called Ted Heath a political giant. Our senior political correspondent, John Ray, is at Conservative Party headquarters tonight. John.
Layla, you know, it all seems like such a long time ago, but time was, it seemed, that Ted Heath was destined to lead the Tory party into a new, modern and moderate era. As it was, of course, he spent the best part of 3 decades at odds with that party leadership. That led to some to call him the incredible sulk, but that's a very harsh judgment on a man of real substance. His time as Prime Minister was momentous. His career in Parliament spanned a full half-century. Yet tonight some will remember the life of Ted Heath for one long and infamous feud, while others will celebrate its single greatest achievement. He was a leader who signed up Britain to what was then the common market, whose passionate belief in the European project was forged in the heat of his wartime experience.
The great majority of my generation said this must never be allowed to happen again, and were determined about it.
Ted Heath was the first of a new breed, the son of a housemaid and a carpenter who rose to lead the Tory party as the old school gave way to the grammar school boy. Strange then that he lacked the common touch.
He had no small talk and no time for, he didn't suffer fools gladly. We all knew that. And I remember once talking to his PA, Michael Wolfe, about a particularly rough piece of treatment that I'd received. And Michael said, join the club, you know. But on the other hand, if you were entertained by him in his home in Salisbury, which he loved and which was an absolutely fabulous place, he was a quite different man.
5 gold rings.
The toothy grin, the shoulder-shaking laugh, his love of music and of sailing, none could endear him to the public. His premiership had promised to tame the unions, but in the end they had him in an arm lock. This was the time of power cuts, of the 3-day week.
The strife has got to stop. Only you can stop it.
He posed the question, who governs Britain? The answer came back, not you. Out of office and out of favour with his party, Margaret Thatcher plunged the dagger. He never forgave her.
We cannot have unity in this party when apparently the work of all previous Conservative governments is to be derided. Least of all for a government of which the present Prime Minister was a very prominent member and I am sure accepts full responsibility.
The great sadness about Ted is that after he lost, he went into a sort of prolonged sulk, which was a pity really, because he had a lot to give the world. He was undoubtedly a figure who liked to play on the world scene. And in a way, from 1974 onwards, after he was defeated, he was more respected outside Britain than inside Britain.
And he was at ease in the role of elder statesman. He travelled to Iraq ahead of the First Gulf War to negotiate the release of British hostages. But it was in Parliament, long after Margaret Thatcher had left the scene, that he continued to toil, quitting only 4 years ago.
Well, in the last few years in the Conservative Party, and I can't speak with authority, he was a reminder of a tradition of one nation conservatism, which many Conservatives realise is an important part of their success in earlier years. People in the House of Commons listened to him always. He didn't speak very often. When he did, it was a serious contribution. And on Iraq and the Gulf War, I passionately opposed him, thought it was totally wrong. And that came across with some strength.
And to the end, he was consoled by this conviction that in steering Britain on a course for Europe, his legacy will be irreversible. And tonight, in the manner of these events, one of the first to pay tribute to Sir Edward Heath was his old adversary, Baroness Thatcher. This is what she said tonight. She said that Ted Heath was a political giant. He was also, in every sense, the first modern Conservative leader. He was confronted by the enormous problems of post-war Britain, and for that, and much else besides, we are all in his debt. And a short time ago, the present Conservative leader, Michael Howard, spoke to ITV News about Ted Heath. This is what he told us.
He will always be remembered for the fact that he took the country into the European Economic Community. But he had many other achievements to his credit. He was one of the political giants of the second half of the 20th century. He was the last Conservative leader to have served in the Second World War. And as Chief Whip, as a senior cabinet minister and as Prime Minister, he made an enormous contribution to the political life of our country.
John, we know he took us into Europe, but what will Ted Heath's legacy really be?
Well, Layla, it will quite simply be Europe. He served in the Second World War. He saw Europe in ruins after the Second World War.
Well, apologies there. We appear to have lost our link with John Ray. Now, in other news, 6 people were arrested tonight in Leeds under the Anti-Terrorism Act. They were taken into custody in Beeston, the suburb where one of the London bombers lived. But police were quick to stress they were not connected to the attacks. Today, the focus in that investigation has been on a bookshop in Leeds, which is thought to have connections with the bombers. From Leeds, Tim Rogers reports.
This is the Muslim bookshop, where much of the police inquiry now seems to be centred. Forensic science teams have been working in shifts to scour it for evidence, and the finger of suspicion is pointing at the fact that there is a link with some of the bombers. These CCTV pictures of the men at Luton railway station, filmed an hour before they committed their atrocity, include Mohammed Sadiq Khan, who was a volunteer at that bookshop. And Shazad Tawir, the sports science student whose bomb at Aldgate killed 7, also worked at the ICRA bookshop. The ICRA website talks of charity and youth work, but our sources have told us it was being used by radical Muslims who shared with the bombers a hatred of the West. We understand that central to the police inquiry now is the effort to find the key figures responsible for the indoctrination of the men who carried out the London bombings. Partially with this in mind, tomorrow Home Secretary Charles Clarke will outline a toughening up of anti-terror laws. He's proposed 3 new offences. There'll be a ban on the indirect incitement to terrorism intended to counter fanatical preachers. Acts preparatory to terrorism, for example accessing radical websites, would also be an offence. And a 3rd law would ban terrorist training at home or abroad. Today, the Lord Chancellor, Lord Falconer, denied that this is a belated response to the terrorist threat.
The fact that they didn't stop these suicide bombs doesn't mean we got the law wrong. We've got to learn the lessons, and that's why we're bringing forward these new laws.
So the pieces are gradually being drawn together, but it is clear that a major part of the police inquiry is to establish who and what motivated 4 young men from West Yorkshire to commit such a terrible atrocity. Tim Rogers, ITV News, Leeds.
In Iraq, extremists have launched a wave of suicide bombings in what they claim is a new campaign to retake Baghdad. 15 bombs have exploded in and around the capital in the last 2 days. The worst attack killed at least 98 people in a market town. It was the single biggest atrocity since the new government took power. Our Middle East correspondent Julian Mannion has the latest.
Today, the surviving residents of Musayyib were in shock after one of the deadliest terrorist attacks since the invasion of Iraq. The centre of the mainly Shiite town was devastated when a suicide bomber somehow detonated a fuel truck near a mosque as people arrived for evening prayers. A market and nearby buildings were engulfed in flame. In scenes of horror, parents are said to have thrown their children from burning buildings to try to save them. Today, the town streets were filled with mourners as the funerals began. At least 98 people died in the inferno set off by the explosion, which was the worst terrorist atrocity since the new Iraqi government was elected earlier this year. In the last 48 hours, there have been at least 15 suicide bomb attacks. This morning in Baghdad, bombers targeted the Electoral Commission and a police convoy. At least 6 policemen and 4 civilians were killed. Ominously, there are now calls for local militias to take up arms to defend their areas. Amid the carnage, the trial of the former dictator Saddam Hussein appeared to move a big step closer, with the lodging of the first formal charges against him. According to the chief judge of the tribunal appointed to try him, Saddam has so far been charged with the murder of Shiite civilians in a village near Baghdad in 1982. Other charges will follow. Julian Mannion, ITV News.
All here, the Ministry of Defence today named the 3 British soldiers who were killed by yesterday's roadside bomb in Al Amara. They're 26-year-old Second Lieutenant Richard Shearer and Privates Leon Spicer, aged 26, and Philip Hewitt, who is 21. All 3 came from the 1st Battalion Staffordshire Regiment, based at Tidworth in Wiltshire. Security is being stepped up at resorts around Turkey tonight after a bomb ripped through a minibus in Kushadasi, devastating a British family. 6 people died in the attack, including a British woman who was named today as 23-year-old Helen Bennett from County Durham. Helen's fiancé was seriously injured alongside her aunt, cousin and brother who had been on a family holiday. Our Europe correspondent Juliet Bremner reports.
Side by side, a British and Turkish flag at the spot where a bomb killed and injured at least 3 members of the same family from County Durham. Tourists left flowers as a tribute to Helen Bennett. Her boyfriend and younger brother are both still in hospital. After visiting them, the British ambassador said his priority was to get the survivors home.
Of course, our priority is to look after the family and to look after those who are injured and to try to ensure that they are restored to health as soon as possible.
The blast was so powerful it ripped the roof off the minibus. For those being taken on the short journey from their hotel to the beach in Kushadasi, no warning, just a brutal end to their summer holiday. The clear intention of the bombers is to drive tourists and their money out of Turkey. But most today were adamant they wouldn't be driven away.
The best we can do is just carry on and enjoy our lives as much as possible and be determined not to let it affect us, you know.
We're absolutely devastated, we're really shocked and it's absolutely awful. But we would say, you know, still come out here, it's a lovely place, don't let it put you off.
No groups admitted carrying out the attack, but those who know Turkey well are convinced it's the work of Kurdish extremists.
They want the Turkish government to negotiate with them and to recognise at least the autonomy, if not the independence, of that part of Turkey where Kurds live.
These deaths will mean that more police are sent to Turkish resorts, but the government has warned it's impossible to stop this kind of indiscriminate terrorism. Juliet Bremner, ITV News.
Golf, and Tiger Woods proved today why he is rated as possibly the best golfer of all time. At the home of golf at St Andrews, Woods won the Open by a massive 5 strokes ahead of Scotland's Colin Montgomery. Now only Jack Nicklaus and Walter Hagen have won more major championships. Neil Roberts reports.
It was the moment that confirmed Tiger Woods as one of the greatest golfers the world has ever seen. A 2nd Open Championship and 3rd place in the all-time list of major championship winners. He now has 10 Grand Slam trophies. St Andrews hailed a true champion, but the Scottish fans weren't roaring for Tiger. Home favourite Colin Montgomery was his closest challenger, making 2 early birdies to move within 1 shot. But then Woods just played even more superb golf. His pin-perfect accuracy beat off Monty's challenge, and in the end, victory came easily, by 5 strokes.
I kept saying to myself that if they make a birdie, like Monty is ahead of me, he's making a run. If he makes birdie ahead of me, you know, if I make birdie in the same hole, it's moot. I mean, we're all square, no blood. So just keep birdie in the same hole as they do, and you know, I should come out on top.
Neil Roberts, ITV News.
A reminder now of tonight's top story. The former Prime Minister, Sir Edward Heath, has died peacefully at his home in Salisbury. Ted Heath, who led the country from 1970 to 1974, will best be remembered as the man who led Britain into the European community. But he'll also be known as the man who fought a long feud with his successor, Margaret Thatcher. Tonight, Baroness Thatcher called him a political giant. Tony Blair said that he was a man of great integrity. Sir Edward Heath, who spent more than half a century in the House of Commons, died at 7:30 tonight. His funeral will be held at Salisbury Cathedral, which he could see from his living room on Monday week. He was 89. That's it. The ITV News channel will have more tributes to Sir Edward Heath. But for now, from all of us here on the Weekend News team, have a very good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.
Hello, good evening. A change in the weather over the next couple of days. It'll look bright and dry at much of the time, I think, but it will be quite breezy and a fair bit cooler than many of us have seen over the last few days. There's some cloud and rain coming in from the north and west overnight tonight. By tomorrow morning, it'll be across many western parts of Britain. Outbreaks of rain here and there, a lot of cloud, the southeast starting off dry and sunny as it has done right through the weekend. As we go through the day tomorrow, that band of cloud will edge eastwards through the day. It'll break up at times, turn more showery, so sunny spells and showers for most of us. The southeast staying dry until the end of the day, and the northwest brightening up nicely once the early cloud has moved away. Cooler everywhere tomorrow, but still pretty warm for most of us, especially in the southeast, touching 25.
Positive energy from Powergen.
He's gorgeous, he's mysterious, he's a swashbuckling Hollywood star. Now the luckiest lady on TV gets to meet the sexiest man on the big screen. Find out what happened when Kate met Johnny. Tomorrow on GMTV.
Coming next on ITV1, a celebration of 50 years of entertainment on the story of ITV, the People's Channel.
Granada weather with BMIBaby.com.